The first thing I remember isn't the noise. It's the smell, diesel and dust, that bitter mix that burns your throat. I stood on the porch my father built 50 years ago and watched strangers bulldoze our family's pasture. 40 acres of grass and sweat, flattened like it never meant anything. My dad's boots still sat by the door, dusted with red clay, the same pair he wore fixing fence lines when I was a kid. He'd been gone less than a week. They sold my ranch while I was burying him, $1. That's what the paperwork said. 40 acres, a barn, a creek, and a lifetime of work, gone for a single dollar. I stared at the notice stapled to my fence like a bad joke, the kind printed on cheap office paper but heavy enough to crush you. The name at the bottom made my stomach twist. Delphine Arquette, president of the Sage Valley Homeowners Association. Sage Valley didn't even exist when my grandfather cleared this land. He broke ground here in 1961 with nothing but a rusted pickup and stubbornness. My dad took over in the 80s, raised cattle and a family, and I was supposed to carry it next. We were the kind of people who measured wealth in calluses, not commas. Then the developers moved in, identical beige boxes sprouting on former BLM land. They called it progress. I called it neighbors who complained about the smell of cows. Delphine arrived with the suburb. White Lexus, turquoise jewelry, a smile that never reached her eyes. She didn't wave when she passed our gate. She inspected it. The HOA crowned her president because nobody else wanted the job. She wrote new community standards every month. Trash cans hidden, grass trimmed, colors approved. My ranch, she said, ruined their property values. I told her it wasn't part of her community. She smiled like a shark that smelled blood. When Dad got sick, everything stopped. Pancreatic cancer doesn't bargain. I spent 18 months between hospital hallways and hospice rooms, holding his hand, listening to him retell the stories that built this place. Every time I drove back home, something new appeared across the fence. Survey stakes, future development signs, HOA letters with polite threats. I ignored them. Grief makes you blind until it's too late. The funeral was small, friends, dust, a sky too wide for mourning. When I came home that night, the wind had torn one of those letters loose. It slapped against the mailbox like it wanted to be read. I tore it open and felt my pulse hammer. Notice of transfer of ownership. Buyer, Sage Valley Estates Homeowners Association. Purchase price $1, effective immediately. I thought it had to be a mistake. The ranch was paid off, deed clear. My father's name was still on every document in the courthouse. But the next morning, I saw surveyors on my pasture drawing lines through my memories. Their orange flags fluttered over the spot where Dad taught me to rope. One of them waved cheerfully and said, "You're lucky. The new owner's planning a wellness retreat." My hands shook so hard I nearly dropped my coffee. That night, I sat in Dad's study surrounded by the smell of old leather and smoke. His hat hung on the wall like a witness. I pulled out every file we ever kept, tax receipts, titles, letters, and spread them across the table. There had to be an answer, some proof this was wrong. But the more I read, the clearer it became. Someone forged his signature. Someone sold my home while I was burying him. Outside, the moonlight washed over the pasture, and the rumble of machinery still echoed in the distance. I walked to the fence line, ran my hand along the cold barbed wire, and made a promise out loud. "They think grief will keep me quiet," I whispered. "They're about to learn it won't." The next morning, I drove straight to the county clerk's office. No breakfast, no sleep, just a notebook, a bad attitude, and the kind of focus grief can sharpen into a weapon. The building smelled like burnt coffee and old paper, the scent of bureaucracy and broken promises. Behind the glass, a tired woman named Ruth slid me a form and said, "Fill this out, honey. $12 a document. $12 for the truth. I'd pay $1,000. 3 hours later, my eyes were burning from staring at microfilm. The letters danced, but the names didn't lie. There it was. Quitclaim deed, Broken Antler Ranch, seller, EMTT Murdoch, buyer, Sage Valley Estates, HOA, consideration, $1, filed 3 days after my father's funeral. My chest went cold. The signature looked like his, but not quite. My dad's hand had trembled in his last months. This one was steady, perfect, deliberate. Whoever forged it didn't know that perfection was the giveaway. The notary seal came from a UPS store 60 miles away. I asked the clerk if she'd seen anything like this before. Ruth just sighed and said, "Son, the county records what's filed. We don't verify if it's true." That line stuck like a splinter. They record lies faster than truth can catch up. Outside, the sky was the same dull gray as the paper I held. I sat in my truck, deed in hand, and for the first time, I realized this wasn't just theft, it was coordination. Someone had planned every detail, down to the timing. They'd waited until my father's death certificate hit the system, until probate hadn't started, until I was neck-deep in grief. They thought I wouldn't check, but they forgot who raised me. Dad used to say, "Never trust what they tell you. Go see for yourself." I started seeing for myself. I pulled property maps, easement records, HOA filings. Every page told the same story. A network of signatures linking Delphine Arquette, her daughter, and a man named Brock Henley, the county planning officer. Emails between them popped up in public archives. Small-town corruption hiding in plain sight. In one message, dated 2 months before Dad died, Delphine wrote, "Once access is established, we'll move forward with acquisition." Access to what? My land, my creek, my father's legacy? The pieces started clicking together like a lock tumbling open. That evening, I drove past Sage Valley. Rows of beige houses, manicured lawns, and Delphine's Lexus parked perfectly in her driveway, like everything around her was measured for control. Her porch light flickered, catching the chrome of my truck as I slowed. For a second, she looked out the window and smiled, the kind of smile that says, "I've already won." I didn't stop. Not yet. Back home, I scanned everything: deed, emails, timestamps, and stored them in 3 different drives. If they wanted a war, I'd fight it on paper before I ever raised my voice. I made a list on the back of an old envelope. Verify every signature. Find the notary. Track HOA finances. Don't let anger get ahead of proof. By midnight, my table looked like a detective's corkboard. Papers, strings, and notes connecting lies to names. My father's handwriting stared back from an old checkbook, shaky but honest. Beside it, the forged deed, confident and clean. One built a life. The other tried to erase it. I leaned back, exhausted but certain of one thing. This wasn't over. They forged the past, but the future still had my name on it. Tomorrow, I'd start proving it. Grief makes time strange. Some days crawl like molasses, others vanish in a blink. That week I didn't sleep much. I'd sit at the kitchen table staring at those papers, the forged signature burning holes in my brain. I wasn't angry anymore. I was something worse, focused. My father always said, "When words fail, let your work speak." He meant it about welding, but now it felt like gospel. The only language people like Delphine understood was power, louder than threats, harder than lawyers, sharper than fear. And I spoke in steel. I called Rafe. Old friend, best welder I ever met. We built oil rigs together back in the day, the kind of man who could bend metal and the laws of physics in the same afternoon. He didn't even hesitate. "You sound serious," he said. "I'm done talking," I told him. "I'm building." Before the sun came up, we were out at the ranch, boots crunching frost, sparks flying. I told him what happened. The forged deed, the $1 sale, the HOA president with her Lexus and lies. Rafe shook his head, muttering, "You can't fix stupid, but you can fence it out." That line stuck. I started sketching the design on an old feed sack, 12 feet tall, solid iron posts, decorative panels every 50 feet. But the real detail? Welded into the metal itself, Colorado Statute 185102, the forgery law. Every letter cut from steel, polished, and visible from Delphine's kitchen window. My fence wouldn't just mark a boundary, it would spell her guilt. Rafe laughed when he saw the blueprint. "You're crazy." "Maybe," I said. "But it's legal. We filed for every permit, every zoning requirement, every code check." Delphine's weapon was paperwork. I was about to turn that weapon on her. By noon, we were welding under a pale winter sun, the smell of molten metal and sage mixing in the cold air. The torch hissed, throwing blue-white sparks that danced across the posts. Each clang of the hammer felt like punctuation in a story only I could write. A story about loss, defiance, and steel that wouldn't bend. When neighbors drove by, they slowed down, curious. A few waved awkwardly. Others whispered. The rumors spread fast. Garrett's building a fortress. He's lost his mind. But I didn't care. I wasn't building a wall. I was building evidence. By evening, I'd welded the first 200 feet, each panel a quiet threat and a public statement. The code numbers gleamed in the sunset like engraved scripture. I stood back, hands black with soot, heart pounding. For the first time since Dad's funeral, I felt something other than loss. That night, I found one of Delphine's emails in my inbox. Garrett, please stop construction immediately. Your fence violates community standards and obstructs our aesthetic vision. I typed one line back, I'm not in your community. No threats. No swearing. Just truth, forged as clean and cold as the steel in my yard. The next morning, Rafe texted a photo. Delphine standing at her fence line, phone in hand, fury on her face. I smiled. For the first time, she wasn't in control. The paperwork told one story. But the fence? The fence was truth you could touch. And it was just getting started. By the third weekend, the fence stretched like a black spine across the property line, 12 feet of iron, standing tall against the horizon. From a distance, it looked like art. Up close, it was war. Each section gleamed with carved metal codes and stamped numbers, Colorado state statutes etched so deep the sun caught them like fire. Neighbors slowed their SUVs to film. Some cheered quietly. Others just stared. In Sage Valley, gossip traveled faster than wind, and now everyone wanted to see the legal wall the rancher was building. But this wasn't revenge. This was record-keeping in steel. Rafe and I welded from dawn till the sky turned purple. Every clang echoed like a heartbeat. Sparks burst in the dry air, drifting like fireflies. We didn't play music. We didn't talk much. It was too personal. Every weld was a promise. You don't steal from a dying man's family and walk away clean. Delphine couldn't stand it. On the fourth day, her Lexus came roaring up my driveway, gravel spitting under the tires. She stepped out wearing designer sunglasses and fury, holding a clipboard like a weapon. This construction violates community standards, she shouted. I lifted my welding mask, sweat and soot streaked across my face. Community standards don't cross my fence line, I said. You're intimidating the neighborhood, she snapped. People are frightened. I looked past her to the row of beige houses behind her, identical, sterile, silent. Good, I said. Fear keeps honest people honest. She turned red. This is a spite fence. It's illegal. Not in agricultural zoning, I replied. 15 feet max. I'm only at 12. Want to measure? For a moment, I thought she might. But instead, she stormed off, tires screeching, leaving the smell of burnt rubber and arrogance. 2 days later, the county inspector showed up. Clipboard, tape measure, expression of someone who'd rather be anywhere else. He checked the posts, height, permits, and boundary lines. When he finished, he nodded. Everything checks out, he said. Can't say I've seen a fence like this before. Good, I said. It's not meant to blend in. Delphine watched from her SUV 50 yards away, snapping photos like evidence could rewrite the law. That evening, I climbed onto the top rail and looked out over Sage Valley. The sun was bleeding orange through the clouds, lighting up the fence like molten gold. I could see the reflection of her Lexus windshield catching that same light. For a brief second, I wondered if she finally understood. This fence wasn't about property lines. It was about boundaries people shouldn't cross. Then something unexpected happened. Two of my neighbors, an older couple who'd lived in Sage Valley since the first phase, walked up to the gate. They looked nervous, like people about to confess a crime. We didn't know, the man said quietly. She told us you'd abandoned the place. Said it was condemned. She lied, his wife added. We're sorry, I nodded. No anger, no speeches. Just truth. You know now. They left, and for the first time I realized the fence was doing more than defending land. It was exposing lies piece by piece. Every post hammered into the dirt was a statement of fact. You can't hide corruption when the evidence stands 12 feet tall. That night, As the crickets sang and the welding torch cooled, I stood alone by the fence and smiled. The law was literally on my side, and soon the whole town would see it too, because I wasn't finished yet. The fence was just the beginning. The fence didn't just divide property anymore, it divided truth from lies. Within a week, it became the town's newest landmark. People stopped on their morning walks to stare, to film, to argue. Some called it brilliant. Others called it petty. But every single one of them wanted to know why I built it, and that's exactly what I wanted. Curiosity is the enemy of corruption. Once people start asking questions, secrets start sweating. It began small. Whispers between neighbors, a Facebook post here, a coffee shop rumor there. Someone noticed HOA dues had quietly jumped again, another $30 a month. Legal expenses, Delphine told them. But no one had seen a single lawsuit. Then one night, a knock at my door. It was Porter, retired accountant, soft-spoken man who lived 2 streets over. He held a folder like it weighed more than his conscience. "I think she's stealing," he said. We sat at my kitchen table, the same table where I'd spread my father's papers weeks earlier. Porter laid out financial statements, all public record, all signed by Delphine herself. Line after line of consulting fees and planning services paid to a shell company called SVW Consulting, LLC. I flipped a page. The mailing address stopped me cold, a UPS box in Denver. "Who owns it?" I asked. He smiled sadly. "Her daughter." It was all right there. Embezzlement hiding behind polite abbreviations. HOA dues funding a fake business. Residents unknowingly paying for the theft of my ranch. Porter sighed. "I've lived here 20 years. I've seen presidents come and go, but this is different. This is greed wearing a pearl necklace." I leaned back in my chair, the gears already turning. "How many homeowners know about this?" "None," he said. "Until now." The next day, Porter and I started making quiet rounds through the neighborhood. We didn't shout. We didn't accuse. We just showed people the math. Homeowners who'd once glared at me from their porches started lowering their voices, then asking for copies. One woman cried right there on her lawn. She'd sold her car last year to keep up with dues. By the 3rd day, the tide had shifted. At the community park, someone had printed one of my fence photos with the caption, "He told the truth in metal. Maybe it's time we listen." It spread faster than wildfire. Delphine tried damage control. She sent an email blast calling me a disruptive individual, accused me of trespassing, harassment, and misinformation campaigns. The problem? The more she spoke, the more people fact-checked her. Every sentence she wrote became another lie to unspool. Then, the hammer dropped. Porter found a payment of $127,000 missing from the HOA reserve fund, transferred in small increments over 18 months. When we traced it, every trail led back to SVW Consulting. The next evening, my phone buzzed. Text from a number I didn't know. "You're right about her. Check the county permit office tomorrow. You'll find what she's hiding." I didn't sleep that night. Morning came slow. The county office was half asleep until I dropped the file number at the counter. The clerk scrolled, frowned, and printed a document that made my blood run cold. Conditional use permit, Sage Valley Wellness Retreat, location, Broken Antler Ranch. There it was. Proof they weren't planning to steal my land. They already believed they owned it. I walked out into the sunlight gripping that paper, the fence line visible in the distance like a dark scar on the earth. For the first time, I wasn't the only one fighting. The town was starting to see what I'd known all along. Truth might bend, but it doesn't break, and soon, neither would I. The day of the town council meeting felt like a storm you could smell before it hit. I'd spent the night rehearsing what to say, but nothing I practiced could match the weight of what I carried. The papers, the proof, the months of fury sharpened into facts. When I pulled into the lot, it was already packed. Pickup trucks beside luxury SUVs, neighbors, officials, reporters. Word had spread fast, the rancher versus the HOA president. Inside, the air buzzed with whispers. On one side, Sage Valley homeowners clutching printouts of Porter's reports. On the other, Delphine's supporters, stiff smiles masking unease. Cameras lined the walls. At the front table sat the town council, 5 members, tired but curious. Delphine entered like she was walking a red carpet. Turquoise jewelry gleaming, perfect posture, confidence oozing. Her daughter trailed behind, phone out, recording every angle like it would save her later. I stayed seated. She scanned the crowd until her eyes found me, and that smile, smug and sharp, landed like a slap. "Next on the agenda," the mayor said, voice echoing through the chamber. "Property dispute between Sage Valley HOA and Mr. Garrett Murdoch." It was time. I stood and walked to the podium. The murmurs quieted. I placed a folder on the stand, plugged in my laptop, and turned to face them. "My name's Garrett Murdoch. 40 acres, 3 generations. 40 acres that were stolen for $1. The first slide appeared on the screen behind me, 2 signatures side by side, one shaky and trembling from chemo. The other smooth, steady, perfect. "This is my father's signature," I said, pointing. "And this is the one someone forged." Gasps rippled through the crowd. Slide 2, the quitclaim deed. Highlighted lines, seller, EMTT Murdoch, deceased. Buyer, Sage Valley Estates HOA. Filed 3 days after my father's funeral, I said. "By this woman." I gestured toward Delphine. She shot up from her chair. "That's a lie! You're slandering me!" The mayor banged his gavel. "Ms. Arquette, you'll have your turn. Slide 3. Notary stamp from a UPS store 60 miles away." "They didn't check ID," I said. "They just stamped it. Because the county doesn't verify what it records. That's how easy it is to steal a life's work." Murmurs turned to outrage. People whispered, pointed, shifted in their seats. Then I nodded to Porter, who stood in the aisle holding a thick folder. He stepped forward. "Our HOA dues over $127,000 were funneled into a fake company," he said, voice steady but shaking with anger. "SVW Consulting, owned by her daughter." Slide 4 lit up, bank statements with transfers highlighted. Delphine's daughter went pale. Someone in the back whispered, "That's fraud." Delphine laughed, brittle and desperate. "You people don't understand business." I turned the next slide, an email. Her name, the county planner's name, the words, "Once we establish access, he'll sell or we'll foreclose." A low roar filled the room. At that moment, a man stood up from the back row. It was Brock, the county planner himself, face drained. He walked slowly to the front, hands trembling. I approved her permits," he stammered. "She promised me partnership. I was wrong. I have the texts, the payments, all of it." He set a USB drive on the table in front of the council. Delphine spun toward him. "You coward!" she shouted. "You were part of this." I let her scream. The crowd didn't. People started booing, shouting for justice. Then the door opened at the back of the room, and 2 sheriff's deputies stepped inside. The room fell silent. The mayor looked down, then back up. "Ms. Arquette," he said slowly, "I've just been informed the district attorney has issued warrants for fraud, forgery, and embezzlement." Delphine froze. The color drained from her face. "No, you can't." One deputy stepped forward. "Ma'am, please stand and place your hands behind your back." Her daughter tried to bolt for the door, but the second deputy was faster. The sound of handcuffs echoed louder than any gavel. As they led them out, Delphine twisted around to glare at me. "You think you've won?" she hissed. I looked her dead in the eye. No, truth did. The room erupted, applause, shouts, tears. Reporters surged forward, flashbulbs popping like fireworks. I turned back to the podium, voice steady now. "My father built that ranch with his hands. I rebuilt it with proof. And every person here deserves to know their money, their homes, their lives aren't toys for people like her." Standing ovation. The mayor banged the gavel one final time. "Council votes to restore ownership of Broken Antler Ranch to Mr. Murdoch. Unanimous." Outside, as cameras flashed and neighbors patted my shoulder, I looked across the street at my fence. The sunset hit the iron just right, lighting up the engraved numbers like glowing truth. And I realized something. Steel doesn't lie. People do, but steel remembers. The courthouse steps smelled like rain and freedom. Cameras flashed, neighbors crowded the sidewalk, and for the first time in months, I could breathe without tasting metal in the air. The forged deed was void, the ranch restored. My name, our name, back where it belonged. When I got home, the wind had calmed. The fence stood there waiting, black iron glinting under a silver sky. I ran my hand across the cold steel, each letter of the statute rough beneath my fingers. CRS 18-5102, the same law they broke, now welded into my land like scripture. That night, Rafe drove up with a six-pack and that grin of his. "You really pulled it off," he said. "We did," I answered. "Every weld, every bolt, it all mattered." He raised a beer toward the fence. To honesty and heavy gauge. We drank in silence, watching headlights crawl along the distant highway. For months, that view had looked like loss. Now it looked like proof that truth, when patient enough, could outlast everything built on lies. News traveled fast. The Gazette ran the headline, "HOA president arrested in massive fraud scheme." Regional stations followed. By morning, the story had gone national. Viewers called it the fence case. Lawyers called it a precedent. The county inspector came by to deliver the final document, title reinstatement notice. He shook my hand, eyes on the towering fence. "Never seen anything like it," he said. "That's the point," I told him. Over the next weeks, the HOA collapsed like a house of cards. Porter was elected interim president. The first thing he did was open every financial record to public view. Dues dropped in half overnight when people saw where their money had really been going. For the first time, Sage Valley started acting like a neighborhood instead of a kingdom. Some folks came by to apologize. A few brought pies. One left a note on my gate that said simply, "You reminded us what right looks like." I didn't need thanks. The land was enough. I spent my mornings fixing fences, real ones this time, wood, wire, practical. But I never touched the iron wall. It stayed exactly as I'd built it, tall, dark, and honest. Kids from the high school started coming by to take pictures for civics class. A local law professor asked permission to include it in a lecture about property rights. I said yes. Let the fence keep talking. Sometimes when the sun hits it just right, the engraved law numbers glow like fire. Tourists think it's decoration. Locals know better. It's not art. It's testimony. Late one evening, I walked down to the creek where my father used to sit and drink coffee at sunrise. The water murmured against the rocks, same as always. I told him quietly, "We did it, Dad. The land's safe." A gust of wind rattled the fence behind me, a low, steady hum, like metal breathing. Maybe it was coincidence. Maybe it was approval. They tried to take this place with signatures and lies. They forgot one thing. Paper burns, but steel endures. Now every time someone drives past Sage Valley and sees that black wall against the sunset, they remember what happened here. They remember that one man with enough patience and proof can make corruption crumble. That's the legacy. Not revenge, not pride, just truth, standing 12 feet tall, because in the end, the fence didn't just protect my ranch. A year has passed since the night the truth came crashing down in that council hall. The noise, the chaos, the handcuffs. It all feels distant now. The ranch is quiet again. The grass has grown back over the scars left by bulldozers, and the sound of cattle at dawn has replaced the echo of engines.